This is Robbie Mackenzie, Youth Ministry 6.3. Nehemiah, that comes from Nehemiah 6:3, which means I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. I have with me Chad Swanzy from youthleaderstash.com, Wild Stash on Twitter. Chad is kind of a guru when it comes to games and mixers and different things like that, and I've learned a lot from his website, and I know you'll learn a lot from him. And Chad, thank you so much for being on, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I looked around on the blog and I noticed that you've had some really awesome leaders before me, and so this is cool, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
No problem, brother. We're talking about games, and if you're like me, you always need a new game. You need a new mixer. You need something new to come on. But when you talk about games, Chad, when it comes to youth groups, youth ministry, college ministry, any type of ministry, why are games so important?
Well, first of all, games are there's no biblical position to have them, and there's not a biblical position against them. And I think it has to do with who you are as an individual and where you want your community to go. And games have been an element that recognizes who students are and the power of friendship, the power of community. Mm-hmm. And so I think when you're doing games, a lot of you guys out there, and I've been in your shoes, you maybe think about, well, why should I do this? And it's just an opportunity for you to think about how I could make this environment better. Mm-hmm. And so you're bringing your group together, and hopefully more than games, you have relationships as your gel. And if you have that in place, or if you're working toward that, games only enhance it.
Right.
They bring these kids together, and they give them an opportunity to have fun with each other, to create a memory. And then I think it also helps pave the way for you to be heard in your conversation, in your talk that you're going to have with the students, and just kind of helps lower the defenses. So those are some of the things that I think about when I think about a defense for games, or a reason.
Right. Yeah. An apologetic for games, you might say.
Right. Exactly.
What you already alluded to the idea of community and stuff like that. What do games do to the dynamic of our youth groups?
There's a lot of great information out there on the pros and cons of games, and I wish I had a list of the posts to send people to.
Sure.
But I think if you're a veteran, and if you've been doing youth ministry for a while, or Young Life, or FCA, you recognize that games do have the power to get out of hand. With bad planning, a game can actually undermine what you're endeavoring to do with kids, and that's to love them well. And that being said, when you think about how you're going to do games, or why you're doing games, it's mostly for fun. There is a layer of competition, but the competition should never define the game as much as just having a good laugh together, right. Not at someone or for their expense. And when you do games, you definitely have to think about how you're conveying them, the spirit of them. And it's almost as if you're throwing a birthday party for your kids, and everybody is turning their age on that day. And so, I think, all that being said, if you can bring your kids together, let them have fun together, and you can laugh with them, you can be in the midst of them, you have leaders who are in the midst of them too, not standing on the wall watching the kids play. That just gives your community more gel. They see themselves as a unit. They see themselves as people who are enjoying what they're doing. And again, it just adds to this thought that being a God follower is viable, or being a part of this organization or this community is viable, and I want to come back. I want to hear what they have to say again. So that's the short, even though it was pretty long. So,
right.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. We're going to talk about resources here in a little bit, but say I want to create some games and come up with new games for for our group. How in the world do you just come up with these games? And you personally, but also other people, how do you come up with these games for your youth group?
You know, there's a ton of sites out there. There's a ton of games, and I would say about 70 to 80% of the games that are on the stash, I didn't create them. They've been around the block for a long time. Some of the games that look original to the stash are just afterthoughts or built upon games where I ask the question, or another leader who has submitted the game asked the question, how could this be better?
Sure.
Or how could this work in our context and be different? And so I think that is the first question that you have to ask is, what's my environment like? How big is this room? What games can be played, actually executed in this space? And what kind of resources do I have? There's a lot of student directors out there that are challenged because they have limited resources.
Sure.
And so when I think about creating a program, I think about the games. I look for games that I can do out there that don't send me to Walmart and ask me to spend $20.
Right.
That might not be much, $20, but over the course of a year, it can be an amount that may be utilized somewhere else. And so, couple of things. The amount of time that you have, and whether or not you're doing small groups. If you have this one moment in your week where you're inviting kids to be a part of a community, and you want to utilize games, it's important for you to be planned in advance with not only what game you're going to do, but also how much time you're going to spend on each game. It's just an element. It's not the center of what you're doing. What the center is, and part of the anatomy of why you should do games, is what's really the most important thing. The games are just preparing the kids toward the main thing, and the main thing is the message you're trying to convey or the experience that you're bringing them there for. So how much time do I need for that? And then back out of that with anything else that you're wanting to be there. Some people it's music, some people it's an announcement, some people it's a video. But the game is usually on the front end, and it's a part of getting everyone activated, getting all their energy out. That's another great reason to have a game, especially if you're working with middle school students and you're having to compete time and time. Oh yeah. If there's any of you guys out there and you are constantly faced with the challenge of looking at your students and they seem to be hyper, disengaged, or you're trying to give the talk and they're goofing around, get that energy out.
Absolutely.
In high school, you might do a mixer, not necessarily a group game, to get the kids engaged with each other, and then you might do a volunteer game that a couple of kids can participate in front of the other kids, and they can be cheered on and stuff and made to look like the hero. But in middle school, it might be that you want to do 3 group games or 2 group games because you just want to get the energy out of these kids. And so in middle school, I might do more hyper-active games that are going to just totally annihilate them to the point that when you get to that discussion or you get to that small group, they've gotten all that energy out. And with high school, the games are structured in a way to where I want them to engage with each other and extend the relationships outside of the clique that they come with or the person who brought them.
That's super.
I don't know if that's helpful. I know it's a lot.
No, that's good. That's good. And what I'm hearing at least is that you're concentrating not only on the dynamics of your group, but also the dynamics of each person, each adolescent, each middle schooler or high schooler. We're all wired differently, and so that you got to take that into factor. Talking with youth ministers, there's always these horror stories where a game went wrong, or we did that game and then afterwards parents and volunteers are like, man, we just should not have done that.
Sure.
What are some cautions when doing games in our youth ministries? What would you say are some major cautions that we need to be made aware of and things that we need to understand before we do a game or any games?
Well, couple of games, and I don't think I'm saying anything that anyone out there doesn't already know, but a few games have been banned by worldwide organizations who advocate youth because they've shown on a percentage basis to be actually harmful to kids, like Chubby Bunny.
Right.
You know, and I've done Chubby Bunny before years ago, but today if you go to an organization like Young Life or you go to some youth advocate websites, they are asking they're telling their leaders, this game's not allowed. Kids have choked and they've died. And so, you know, I think sometimes when we're in the midst of some of those games, we know beforehand this game has a high potential to cause physical pain. You know, we do a game at camp, and it's called Tubal Warfare, and there's a proximity to danger that we come to, and we're very intentional about the rules before we play Tubal Warfare, and we're also intentional about how we pit students together. We don't put the senior against the incoming sixth grader. It's a recipe for disaster. So I think games that cause physical harm. There's a game that, you know, I think too, you got to recognize when you're getting caught away, when the adolescent within you as an adult is wanting to execute something for your kids that's really about you. There's a game that I've always wanted to play, but I know if I play it, we're going to hurt someone, and it's just pretty much. Some people call it mattress war, but you get. You line two kids up in a room across from each other. They hold a mattress up in front of them, and then they just all-out sprint carrying that mattress until they collide.
Oh, wow.
And they bounce off each other pretty hard.
Right.
Because, number one, they're not ready for it. They don't know when it's coming. It's the same thing with this game that, and if any of you guys have played it out there, this is not me keeping score. I don't know who you are. But just think about... I think more about the danger, not anything that I think there's some golden rules. Let me explain the game, and then I'll go to the next phase. But, the trash can where you put a big 30-gallon drum over someone, and then the same principle, they run toward each other, or you got four lined up, and then they collide, and they hit each other with these trash cans on. That could cause a world of hurt. Yeah. But sometimes we do volunteer games, and the first thing I'm thinking about is who I pick. That is a definite rule of thumb. A lot of times we get in trouble because we pick the wrong student. We pick a student who is not self-conscious about who they are in front of the group, and you've empowered them. Maybe they don't have the social awareness of how they articulate themselves, or even how they present themselves physically. Yeah. And so you might put them in a volunteer game where they're compromised, and later on students might be laughing about that or at them, or it might show up on Facebook, and you're like, oh my gosh, we did this game and put this girl, this precious daughter of Christ, in a compromising situation. Oh my gosh. So, I think about that. I think about games where I have to be careful about gender mixing. But I just think through and ask questions. Is this bringing someone hurt? Does it put them in a situation where their integrity is compromised, or there's some kind of moral compromise that this game presents? And that's a judgment call. Sure. But I think you bounce that off of key leaders before if there's any doubt in your mind, I don't feel good about this game, but maybe it's just me and I'm being overcautious. Ask that leader and see what they think.
That's super. Good advice. Top 3 games. If you were to say these are games that every youth ministry must do, and they're games that your group's going to love, what 3 games would you recommend?
That's a really tough question. I have one thing, first off, is I've got 2 posts on Youth Leader Stash, the top 5 group games and the top 5 volunteer games. So those are games that are often searched the most on Stash that I see in the analytics. Yep. So people love these games. But I think about games. The games that I think are the most fun are the ones that you didn't have to pay any money for. Right. And they're a hit. So there's a game called Bring It On, Woman. It's on the Stash under that label, and basically all the guys sit on the floor, they huddle, they lock arms, they lock legs. you give the girls about 1.5 to 2 minutes to rip them apart, and they have to hold on with each other. You pipe in some Rocky music, Eye of the Tiger, in the background, and if a girl separates a guy from the group, he's done, he's out. And so you get some pretty vicious girls in there, and you give them no holds barred, do whatever you want. You know, they can get those guys separated, but if the guys hold on, they feel as a group as though they gelled together. That's a great game.
Yep.
Poop Deck is another game that doesn't cost any money. You just create 2 lines that become 3 different zones, and then you have a ship or a captain who's calling out the names of the deck, and the kids have to run to that deck. If they cross the line prematurely, or they are in the wrong zone, or what have you, they're out. And so that's a high activity game where they're running back and forth. There's a new game. I don't know if this is one of the top group games, but I think it's a lot of fun, and a lot of groups haven't played it very often. It's called Crab Walk. Split the room in 2. Maybe you say seniors and freshmen over here, sophomores and juniors over here, and they turn around with their backs facing each other along a wall. They get on the floor, and when you say go, they got to crab walk to the other side.
Oh, wow.
The last group, backwards crab walk, so they don't see each other. So the last group to or the first group to get all their members across to the other wall and touch the other wall are the winners. So what happens is a low impact, a moderate impact way, they collide in the middle. They have to go over the top of each other and to the other side. I think that's a fun game. It's easy to do. And the kids have fun because they're all involved. They're all laughing. They're all crawling over each other. And you just have to watch the shady couple that takes advantage of it. So
Absolutely.
There you go.
Those are awesome. Last question. Other than youthleaderstash.com, what are some resources online or in print or whatever? What are some resources that you would recommend us use for games?
Okay, so I got to open up my reader. And so I just have a lot of blogs that I just watch them. So Young Life Playbook is a website I go to often, and they have a lot of games. They have a lot of great ideas for activities, events, themed clubs, or themed youth activities. YL Help is another great blog, and they have a ton of games as well. I think Youth Ministry Ideas, the flavor with that website is where they not only position a game, but they try to look for games that they can create a spiritual context around. And some of us are ninjas at that. We can be presented anything and then have this create some off-the-wall transition. When I think of hair, I think of Samson. Okay, we just went from this volunteer game to this talk. Great, but they really dive into giving you a verse, giving a lesson, a direction out of a game or an experience that you can teach from. And for some people, that works, and so I think it has its place and merit. So those are a few of the games or a few of the websites that I go to, and I think that pretty much sums it up.
That's awesome. Chad, appreciate you being on. Hang on a little bit. This is Youth Ministry 6.3, Chad Swanzy from youthleaderstash.com. Visit his website, plug in, and I'm sure you'll be blessed. Thank you so much, Chad. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.